are tuned in and watching the Zone Blitz. This is the weekly Tuesday night webcast by
Sharona,
NFL.
my screen still says off air. I don't have the little live button.
Well, mine says live. We're going to go with mine.
Then if you're live, then that's cool. It's all that matters. Oh, mine says live now. Okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So www.nflfemale.com. Be sure to jump on our website and check out all the latest and greatest articles by all of our wonderful women who cover not only the 32 NFL teams, but we have divisional writers. And my name is Sharona, am the official NFL reporter for NFL Female. You can find me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. And little plug here, you can catch me tomorrow night on the Wednesday night podcast talking to Kat Cressida about her work with ESPN, pardon the interruption, and of course my favorite and some of yours, the gaming industry. She's a voiceover artist, and it's going to be very exciting to talk to her. Plus I get to see Michelle 2 nights in a row. Well, really kind of talk to Michelle 2 nights in a row. But I'm very excited to be back and to be healthy. Our girl Sonja will hopefully be able to pop in later. She has mom duties tonight, but I'm joined by my other wonderful co-host, Kate. Kate, I'm going to kick it over to you to let you introduce yourself and to bring in our guest.
Well, hello. I am Cleveland Kate. You can find me on Twitter at CLVLNDK8. I'm the official fan reporter for the Cleveland Browns. Haven't had very much good to write about my team this year. We've officially announced that Johnny Manziel will be the starter this week. I for one am shocked, but we'll see. They had one question going into this season, and it was, can Johnny Manziel be the NFL quarterback for this team? So if we're lucky, we'll have the next 4 weeks to find out. If not, maybe our guest knows if he might have a home in Dallas. Joining us tonight is the fabulous, shaking her head no already, Miss Michelle. Michelle is the official fan reporter for the Dallas Cowboys. Michelle, introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you guys for the first time this year.
Is it the first time?
The first time.
Better.
I know, this is the first time. So I just wanted to say, because as I was listening to Cleveland Kate, I was like, nope, I hope Johnny starts, and I hope he does well so that he can stay in Cleveland. we do need a quarterback, but I want us to go a little bit somewhere else.
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty bad when Dallas, with all their quarterback problems and Romo being hurt again, doesn't even want Johnny Manziel.
Who's Johnny? No, keep.
Oh, there's another 80s movie. Too much. No disassemble. Too much crazy off the field stuff for you. You guys have been pretty quiet this year compared to previous seasons.
I know. His off the field stuff doesn't really bother me because it's the same stuff he was doing when he was in college. I mean, he's just in the pros now. I mean, he's the same. He's a kid. He's a young guy. He has a lot of money, and sometimes some of them can't handle that. And he's still partying. So I don't know if he's going to grow out anytime soon. But
yeah, if we're all going to be honest, when it comes to the bad boys of the NFL, Johnny's still playing, Pop Warner League. He's not anywhere near some of the bad guys. His biggest problem is he hasn't had really any NFL success for people to give him a pass. And the only way he's going to get that is to start playing and to win some games. And if he wins a few games, then I guess he can go out to the bars with his friends. It all boiled down to, I think, this last time of he promised them he wouldn't be the story, and he ended up being the story. And when your friends are the ones putting out videos of you, not random strangers, maybe you need to do a little growing up in that department as well and tell your friends, quit getting me in trouble and quit putting out videotapes of me. But, you know.
But, I think if Johnny
it would. Well, and he needs to know that. He needs to know that, and he needs to balance that out. If he wants to be an NFL quarterback, then he has to change his entire life. And if he wants to have the attitude of, I can do what I want, then that's fine. But you can't be at least the quarterback here in Cleveland. You can't have both.
Well, and two, he was in rehab, and, he promised, you make certain assurances and certain promises when you're released from rehab as well. And it's just overall not a good look.
Well, it is, and I would love to know, his teammates are all being very closed-mouthed about the whole situation, and that's really what matters to me. It doesn't matter what you or I think about his behavior off the field. It matters about his offensive linemen, his wide receivers. Will they follow him on the football field? Will they listen to him in the huddle? And can he lead the team? And if there's any issue at all in the locker room with his shenanigans, then your team is just going to be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and nobody's talking, which I guess is a good thing. They're all keeping it very quiet, and I have to assume the head coach has a good has his fingers on the pulse of the team, and that he knows they were not happy with Johnny's behavior, and so he had to crack down on him. He sat out 2 weeks. Now McCown's on IR, so we don't have a lot of options. We were so thoroughly embarrassed by the Cincinnati Bengals. I understand that they're, you know, a really good team this year, and if Andy Dalton can do anything in the playoffs, they're going to be favored to get all the way to the Super Bowl. But you still shouldn't lose at home as badly as we did Sunday, and it just felt like the entire team gave up. And it's one of the biggest differences, I think, between us and the Dallas Cowboys is, with all the problems you guys have had with Romo's injuries and the different quarterbacks that have come in, I never felt like the rest of that team gave up. They were still trying and playing and working their butts off. I see you picked up Robert Turbin, who used to be here. You know, they're still playing for that team and for their coach, and I think that says a lot about the Cowboys.
Well, they're only one game out, Michelle. It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's crazy. Nobody in that division is over 500. I think the Redskins have won 6 games, is it? Or is it 5? Yeah. It is crazy. I mean, it's the NFC South last year, right? Yeah. Yeah, it,
The whole
it is
NFL's been
crazy.
weird this year. There's
Yeah.
just so many teams, you know,
Hmm.
at the bottom of the pile. Is we're scoreboard watching here in Cleveland. We're the first team to officially mathematically be eliminated from the playoffs. Thank you very much.
Aw.
And we're scoreboard watching for draft picks now. We've got to hope that Tennessee and San Diego, you know, at least win at least one more game so that we can be guaranteed that #1 draft pick. Lord only knows what they'll do with it, but that's what we do for scoreboard watching now. Is we hope these other teams that only have a couple wins, you know, can find. I'm looking at the standings. We've got 2. Tennessee finally got 3, and the Chargers have 3, so we have a little breathing room. But I'm almost afraid to play San Francisco this week because God forbid we win, and then we go from the first round in the draft, the first pick in the draft, down to like 3rd or 4th because of the tiebreakers. The draft tiebreakers are ridiculous. It's record and then strength of schedule, and it feels like they do it backwards. If we end up with the same record as the Chargers, even though they beat us head to head, that doesn't factor in. They had a tougher schedule. And my argument's always been, if you have a weaker schedule and you can only win 2 or 3 games, you're a worse team and you need a better
Yeah, I
draft
think
pick
that's a good
than somebody
point.
with a hard schedule, but that's not how
Yeah.
it goes. So we're now keeping an eye on the Chargers in Tennessee to make sure we're hoping they can win at least one more game, give us some breathing room.
Well, I was happy that the Titans just avoided being swept by the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. So they did come back and win that football game Sunday. Michelle, Matt Castle has been so bad. What are they going to do at quarterback? Yeah, yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah. No, he's pretty bad. That's true. Yeah. 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 I think he needs a different place. Yeah.
I
I
agree. He needs a fresh start and he needs the right system. And I thought all season that he could do well in Dallas. And I knew at the beginning of the year, like you just said, it was only a matter of time, between my Josh McCown and your Tony Romo before one of them was hurt and either on IR or just. I guess they're not putting Romo on IR. If you do make the playoffs, they're hoping he'll be able to come back.
He's
Is
not
that the
going to come
story?
back. It's crazy.
Play, and then he has to play on a short week at that. So you're asking him to play when he's not 100%. Then he has to play on a short week for a team that couldn't win one game.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
You guys could get, I don't know what your cap situation is or what his cap is, but Colin Kaepernick might be available. But I
I'll
mean,
take him in Cleveland. I think he's another one who could use a fresh start, and
I
he
do
needs the
too.
right system. He
I
really
do
does
too.
need the right system. We could
Yeah.
take him here.
Yeah. Well, I think that he would fit. He's, well, Romo's definitely a better passer, but I understand, Michelle. But I mean, I think it just highlights the problem that Dallas has. There's nobody out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, tell Jerry he can have my number one draft pick. Jerry can have my number one draft pick next year. We'll just swap first round picks as long as he takes Johnny too.
She's not having anything to do with Johnny Football.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
They
We
were
don't
saying
value wide receivers in Cleveland. You don't need them.
they
We
were
only had
saying
two
on
healthy ones
Twitter
on
last
Sunday.
night that wide receiver was Dallas's biggest offseason need. Miles Austin's available. He just got, yeah,
Wow. Joey
yeah.
Bosa from Ohio State's coming out. He would fit in really well with your defense in Dallas. But you sound just like me. I'm scared of what we do at the number one pick. I think I honestly think the Browns would end up trading down and trying to get multiple picks from somebody else for that number one. There's no Andrew Luck or RG3 this year. There's a lot of good college quarterbacks, but you can get them through the first and second round. There's nobody that I see like even last year you had Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. I just don't know who that guy is. Now, maybe as the college football playoffs go on and the bowl games go on, somebody will jump out at me. But, there's names floating around here, but nobody that's the consensus number one overall must have, lead pipe lock player. So it just makes me, I don't want the number one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's the leader of your defense? Who's the guy
Gotta
that
be
everyone
Sean
should be
Lee.
looking to?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, he did. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is sad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, hard hitter. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have nobody else.
Well, they're not big enough to put on the line.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
All right, I'm
yeah.
gonna
He's
add you, Michelle. I'm gonna add you to my list of the NFL female ladies I know who should be the general manager for their team. Just let us have 1 year. I'm gonna draft for the Browns. You can draft for the Cowboys. Sonja's gonna draft for the Lions. Just give us 1 year, because frankly, we could not do worse than these people that are running these teams now. We all
I'll
know
draft
what
for
they
the
need,
Titans. I
and
could
they
do a
won't go
better
get it.
job.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, they were. What do you think? Yeah, what do you think about Gavin Escobar? I do too. Yeah. Yeah. May I remind everybody where Jason Witten went to college?
Oh, but the problem
Boston
is
Life,
there's so
baby.
much film on Jason Witten. You let Escobar, some of these other guys get in and get some plays to them. The defenses aren't really, on them the way they're on Witten, and they're not prepared for him. And so there comes a time where, as good as someone is, you've got to go to somebody else that the defenses aren't familiar with. But your problem has been with all the quarterback changes due to Romo's injury. They don't have a good chemistry with the receivers either. It seems like Romo knows Terrence Williams isn't going to get to his spot, so he throws a little behind him, assuming he's not going to get there. The other quarterbacks are looking at the play, and this is where you're supposed to be, and they assume he's going to get there, and they're having problems. So some of that, I think, gets fixed when Romo gets back. But I love your thoughts on the defensive backs and how important those are. I try to explain to people that how important, offense is a great thing, but field position is huge. And if you don't have good defensive backs, if you can't get some 3-and-out stops or keep the other team from gaining ground and give your offense good field position, you set them up to have to go, 80, 90 yards every time, and that's not good either. And so if you've got a good core of defensive backs that can tire the offense out, that can make them, have to punt or at least, make them feel the pain. I always talk about both offensive and defensive linemen like a boxing match. They're hitting each other the first, second, third quarter so that they can break something free in the fourth. It's all, how tired your legs get, how tired you get from all those hits all day, and you need those guys are quick just to keep them on their toes. And so I think Dallas would be dangerous if they just had one or two different pieces on the defensive line.
All right, let's go ahead and turn to fantasy football and our injury segment, and we'll
Oh,
let Kate fill us in on. I know it's been such an injury-plagued season.
well, and it's been interesting here in Cleveland. We only had one player worth having on a fantasy football roster, and that was Gary Barnidge. But just from a player injury standpoint, I think half my team is either in concussion protocol now or has been. Joe Hayden hadn't played in like 6 weeks. I'm not sure why he hasn't come back yet, unless they're just making sure either he's completely 100% or they've decided that we've just lost so many games. Maybe what Dallas should have done with Romo is we're just going to let him sit out until we're absolutely sure he's healthy. We don't want to risk another concussion and doing any more damage to him because this season is lost. And at least in Dallas's division, their season isn't lost yet. Now that we've been mathematically eliminated, I don't know that Joe Hayden will play again, and that's been just killing our defense. C.J. Anderson, running back for the Denver Broncos, was finally starting to get some stuff going on. He is questionable for this week with a sore ankle. Kubiak thinks he's going to play, but he did sit out of practice yesterday. Heath Miller, for tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers, has been plagued with a rib injury. He is been upgraded to questionable for this week. And I know from a fantasy football perspective, losing Tyler Eifert is questionable. He may also come in this week for the Bengals. But Gronkowski is still out. Jimmy Graham is out. And a lot of us who are making a run at the playoffs in fantasy football are really struggling to find tight ends. Don't pick up Gary Barnidge. Go look for guys like Ben Watson, Rodgers from
Green Bay.
the Packers, from Green
Yes,
Bay,
Green Bay.
the other Rodgers in Green
Yeah.
Bay. There
The
are a
Rogers
couple of them.
Rogers
Clay
connection
in Buffalo.
really paid off for people who played him.
Yes. Clay in Buffalo is another guy that might be available in your leagues, but that seems to be the position that's hurting the most right now from a fantasy perspective. the entire like wide receiving core for the Atlanta Falcons or the Arizona Cardinals is just a mess. John Brown and Michael Floyd are both having hamstring issues, and Larry Fitzgerald's got a sore ankle, so they are all questionable for this week. And somebody who I know my husband has gotten a ton of fantasy points out of is Alan Hearns, the wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's one of the bright spots on that team this year. He has done really well, but he has been upgraded to probable, so it looks good that he will play this week. Stevie Johnson for the San Diego Chargers. That's a coin toss. He's still down at questionable. He was ruled out last Sunday against the Broncos because of a groin injury, and those are kind of tricky. I don't pretend to know exactly what is entailed with a groin injury. I just know that it's sore and that it affects your legs and it affects your leg strength down into your hamstrings. And so if you're not 100%, they're not going to let you play. Willie Snead is a wide receiver down in New Orleans. Drew Brees needs as many weapons as he can get. Willie should be back this week. He's someone that we saw in training camp here in Cleveland, and we let him go, and he's been doing just fine for the Saints. Andrew Luck is still out. I don't know what's going to happen to the Colts. I don't know how they even get through the rest of this season. With this whole year has been a huge disappointment.
Matt Hasselbeck is injured too, right?
Yes. So I'm not sure who that leaves them with at quarterback down there. It's just I think they've been the most disappointing team to me this season from what I expected from them. And then Gronkowski's knee, he has not practiced. He didn't practice on Monday. He's going to be held out on Wednesday. I don't think he'll play this week either. So they've got enough of a lead. If it comes down to needing to win another game for seeding and to try to get home field advantage or try to get a bye, then they may push him back next week, but I'd be very surprised to see him play this week. So those are the latest fantasy football. In general, from fantasy football, if you're making a run at the playoffs, matchups are huge the next couple weeks. Even if your players are healthy, you want to look at who you're going to be playing in your playoff round in 2 weeks to see if maybe there's someone on the waiver wire that you can still pick up. Most rosters, I think, will freeze after this week's games. So while I usually just look week to week, if you have a shot at the playoffs, you need to start looking ahead and who your matchup's going to be against for weeks 15 and 16, depending on how your playoffs work. I have 5 fantasy football teams, and I only have 1 league in which I'm above 500. It's pitiful. And my husband needs to win this week to get into the playoffs, and he plays me. So he keeps telling me how I shouldn't really try to win because he needs to get into the playoffs, and I keep telling him I will never let him win. But his team is like a 30-point favorite over mine, and I have all my best players in my. I was decimated by injuries earlier this year. I lost Arian Foster, Jamal Charles. For a while, I just felt like I was a big, huge IR jinx for anybody, and I was afraid. I dropped Andrew Luck, hoping Colts fans would quit yelling at me, but he didn't get knocked out again until after I dropped him. So I'm sorry if I have any of your players and your team's not doing well. I'll take full responsibility for that one.
I know. It really has been a very injury-plagued season, and I've had a lot of issues with injury, too. Michelle, do you play fantasy football? Yeah. Right. Oh, wow. You got you got lucky.
Nice.
How you doing on your pick'ems? Oh, okay. Right. Oh, that's good.
Sharona, what
Many.
do you think about these injuries? Part of me is incredibly unhappy with the refs this year and the way they've been calling stuff. But I'm seeing a lot of these injuries that are just there are no contact injuries. The
Yeah.
guys are just falling and there's nothing, no play going on around them. And I think Michelle, I think we did the NFL female podcast on a Wednesday earlier in the season, and one of the things that we were concerned about was training camp and the way the CBA changed all the rules. And
Mhm.
these guys, I don't think are in the right condition, and they're not
Mhm.
having enough practices. Do you think that's contributing to the number of injuries? Are you seeing a pattern anywhere for what's causing
I've
this? This
I've heard
season's
some
been so
older
weird.
Yeah, I've heard some older veteran players who are no longer playing anymore say that they think that that's a huge issue and that's part of it. That they're just not in football shape, and there's a difference between being in shape and your body being physically ready to absorb the impacts. That and I do think that it's a legitimate concern. I was talking on my Wednesday night show. I don't know, was it? I think it was last week. And it's hard for me, and I'm sure it's hard for you ladies too, because we're civilized human beings, and when you sit back and watch all these injuries, and football is kind of a barbaric sport, and it does. I mean, it's been really hard for me this year to watch it, and because we know now more than ever, we know what long-term effects there are, and you get these reports. Frank Gifford had CTE, and so it's definitely it's hard for me to reconcile that part of it with the love part of it that I have.
My husband and I were talking about this, and he brought up something I hadn't really thought about. He said he heard one of the older NFL players say there's a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. And
Yeah.
back in the day, guys played hurt all the time. They didn't sit out a week for a hamstring or a groin. They played through it. And then, but you tear an ACL, that's an injury. You can't physically, you broke your collarbone. He thinks that a lot of these guys are being more coddled now. And I said, maybe they're sitting out more than guys would have 10 years ago, but I think some of that is because they saw how short their careers got because they didn't sit out a week to get fully healed. Do you think any
Hmm.
of that plays into this, that they're actually being more cautious? That new movie about concussions is coming
I
out.
don't know. I think it's hard to judge that because I think a lot of guys hide stuff. The old adage, you can't make the club from the tub
Yeah.
thing. And the flip side to that is that there's more scrutiny now, so it's harder, to hide. But how many times this season have you seen a guy get his bell rung and leave the game? You're like, that he's got a concussion, he ain't coming back, and then 3 plays later he's back in. I mean, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I don't have any answers. I just know that it's really hard, to watch some of the injuries and
Yeah.
and to think about what that
Well,
that
and
guy
I'm still
had
not seeing, to your point, I'm still not seeing a lot of consistency from team to team.
Yeah,
Because you're right,
no.
I'll see a guy get his bell rung, and all of a sudden the medical staff's out there, and he's on the sideline, and he's back in the locker room getting checked out, and other guys will just disappear on the bench for a couple plays and kind of hide, and then they get back in as soon as they're allowed back in. And
Yeah.
I'm not even seeing consistency in how some of this stuff is dealt with from team to team. Because you can clearly see, we had, Michelle, I tell our audience this every week, I can turn any topic back to being about me and my Browns. But when we played Baltimore, Justin Gilbert was returning a punt and actually took a slide tackle from their kicker, Tucker, and not only knocked him out cold, he was out on the field, like laying on the ground, holding the ball underneath him, and he was out for like 3 seconds. And luckily, he was okay, but they took him off the field. They took him to the locker room. They checked him out. He didn't come back in, and they made sure that he was okay before he came in again. But, a lot of these guys look to me like they're stunned, and they manage to get up and get off the field before they have to get helped off. And for some teams, I've seen them back in again, and I'm thinking there's no way that he had time to go to the locker room. There's no way somebody asked him, how many fingers am I holding up? What day is it? None of that stuff.
They're supposed
to
be
just back in. They're supposed to be, right? A neutral doctor, medical, something on every sideline, but I don't know if they rotate, if it's the same guy and he develops a relationship with them. I don't know how that process works.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely do wonder about that. Real quick, my Straight Up with Sharona segment, I wanted to talk about this, so I'm going to hit upon it real quick, and then we'll talk real briefly about college playoffs with Michelle, and then we'll be done because we're almost 15 minutes away. Well, we did start late, so I guess we got maybe 20 minutes. But my Straight Up with Sharona segment, I want to talk about Bill Belichick and his little huddle, so to speak, with line judge Sarah Thomas in this past week's game. And the photograph that was being passed around on Twitter definitely made it look a lot worse than what it was. When you look at the video, not sure that he actually ever physically touched her, but he definitely got close, and he definitely had his arms and hands over her shoulder, and it was definitely uncomfortable in a way that a lot of people commented on. It was inappropriate, in my opinion, but it was inappropriate in a way that I don't think that mostly me, I haven't seen any female woman sports reporter write about it, but I was able, as I was going through and getting ready for tonight's show, I checked out some articles by male sports writers talking about it, and the tone of those articles just reinforced to me the problem that the whole incident had. Women have been, since the beginning of time, I'm sure, have been forced to endure having their personal space invaded. They've been forced to endure having men put their hands on them in moments when they don't, in a way that they don't necessarily want or appreciate or need, and it's particularly awful and bad when it's done in the workplace. That's why we have laws against sexual harassment. It's why we have laws that prohibit women from being forced to accept unwanted attention and unwanted advances from, and it's not just the opposite gender, from any gender. And it shouldn't be done to a man either. I should point that out. But these articles all talk, one of them from a Yahoo Sports reporter said that Bill Belichick needed a hug and maybe Sarah Thomas should give him a hug. It infuriated me. Because that is completely inappropriate. No, she doesn't need to hug him. That is the problem. The other article talked about the fact that this was a slow dance. No, it wasn't a slow dance. It was borderline, unwanted, and unnecessary physical contact between a coach and a female official, and it's wrong, and the way you're reporting on it is wrong. You got to get your optics right here.
If it had been a male referee that he had done that to, do you think they would be writing these articles and that they would saying, Joe Smith needs to give Belichick a hug?
Yeah, no, not in the vein that they're writing it about.
Yeah, that's what bothers me.
In the flippant way that they're writing about it.
Belichick's behavior was unacceptable regardless of the gender of the referee involved.
I completely agree.
And that's what people should be yelling about, is that Bill Belichick damn near put his hands on an official, and you don't do that. Players don't touch officials. Coaches don't touch officials. I don't care if you're Bill Belichick with all the credibility and the history that he has. or you're Mike Tomsula and it's your first year in the league, you are not allowed to touch officials. You shouldn't be getting confrontational with any of them like that. And it makes me crazy. It makes it, in my opinion, harder for women to have jobs like that when that's all anyone wants to talk about is he almost put his hands on a girl. No, the coach almost put his hands on an official.
He invaded the personal space of an
Absolutely
official in a manner that he did not need to do so in order to get his point
And it wouldn't have
across.
been tolerated if he'd have done that to the head judge or any of the other guys that were there. He'd have either gotten 15 yards or he'd have been ejected from the game. They
He was
wouldn't have put up with it.
absolutely attempting to intimidate her, too.
Yep. Yeah. So it was not okay.
Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. All right, Michelle. Do you want to talk about Bill or you want to talk about college playoffs? Yeah. Well, she shouldn't have had to. The official in charge. I forget. I don't know
Yes.
whose crew it was.
Yes,
The
absolutely. The
official
head
in
official,
charge
the
should
head of the
have. She
officiating
shouldn't have
crew
been forced to have to
should
do
have
it.
seen what happened, and he could have thrown his flag and given him. I've seen coaches get penalties for yelling at officials in the past. He should have gotten one right there. Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah. hmm I completely agree with
And I
that.
think that's why she didn't throw the flag. I think she thought in the moment that it would just go away and nobody would.
I would
Yeah.
have thrown the freaking flag. No, and I understand your point. And Claire and I had this conversation on Twitter. You don't want to make it a woman thing, but the fact remains that it's been for a long time. It's been a problem. And if you're going to talk about it and if you're going to report on it, you need to understand that. You need
I
to
agree. I can
understand
agree with
that
that.
optic
Yep.
part of it.
Yep.
So, all right. So, Clemson. How about Clemson? I like it because I like Clemson. Mhm. Yeah, Alabama. But I know it's exciting.
Yeah, well, I want 8 teams in the playoff because the wrong Big Ten team is in the top 4. I know, I know. And I was happy with the 4 last year when my team was in the 4, but now that my team is Ohio State Buckeyes are not in the 4, I need 8. And I still stand by my argument that the wrong Big Ten team is in the playoff. I understand that Michigan State is the Big Ten champion, but you only beat the Michigan Wolverines because of that stupid kick that you blocked and took in. And then you only beat my Buckeyes because they had a complete brain fart for that last series of the game. And so those were two crap wins. Those weren't even quality wins.
Yeah,
but you won the Big Ten championship.
They
So that's
spend
how
just as much as the others.
Bitter table for one right
dollar,
here.
a dollar.
I can admit it. I'm bitter and biased for my Buckeyes. But no, they won. I know. So I have to root for Michigan State to do well, just because the Big Ten is still not getting the respect that I think it deserves, even with us winning last year. It would be nice if they could at least get into the championship game, but they're going to have their hands full. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I thought it was odd that they put Notre Dame and Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl together, just because typically I thought the bowl committees, when they're picking teams, try to figure out how to get good ratings and try to find teams that'll travel well. And I just figured Ohio State and Notre Dame both will get huge ratings and both will bring a ton of fans. And so I thought you'd pair them up with maybe a Temple or maybe other teams that aren't quite as famous, so to speak. You know what I mean? Just to try to draw some attention to some other games. But they're playing each other. It'll be interesting. The silver bullets against the gold helmets. I know. That's what people are like. So are you excited that Ohio State's in the Fiesta Bowl? I'm like, I don't even know when it is. They lost to Michigan State, and all I had to look forward to was beating Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines, because that's what we do. And then my football season was over for both professional and college football. I mean, I'm kind of watching games now, but they don't mean nothing to me. It's the rough football life here in Northeast Ohio. It's rough. It's rough.
So Michelle, you like the Mark? I mean, I understand that he's got that connection, right? You think Mark Ritt's going to do better at the U? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, weaker conference. Yeah, possibly. And he's got the weak. He's even got the weak side, right? Do you? Okay. Somebody tried to tell me that they had the weaker side, but okay. Oh yeah, okay. All right. All right. I was gonna. The weird one. I don't understand why South Carolina hired Will Muschamp. Like a couple of days ago, I think something like that. The former, yeah, I think he was at Auburn. They hired him from the Auburn stuff. Yeah, he got fired. Mhm. Yeah. What'd you think about LSU maybe possibly thinking about firing Les Miles? You think he's going to be there much longer? He really has. Uh, I thought they definitely underperformed this year. I mean, I thought yeah. Well, I thought it was odd to me, even though I sometimes question Les Miles's coaching decisions. when they turn out, when they turn out, he's like the Mad Hatter, but when they don't, it's like, boy, I mean, but yeah, I mean, who better? They really did. It's crazy. Yeah,
I
I
think
just
they
don't
were
know who
hoping
they.
he'd resign because they couldn't survive the PR nightmare of firing him. And I think they thought maybe if they threw some stuff out there that maybe he'd resign. And he said, no, you want to get rid of me, you're going to have to fire me. And none of them have the nads to do that. So he's still there.
I do think though that Les Miles better do better this next season, or I just don't know who they would get that would possibly be. I mean, I don't know who the up and coming young hot coaching names are. I guess we've got one at Tennessee, but it's Jones, but he needs to do better too. So interesting. So. All right. Well, it doesn't look like Sonja's going to be able to join us, and we've got through our college playoffs, so we'll knock off just a little bit early tonight. Michelle, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you out there in the Twitter sphere on social media and what you're working on these days? Every week, like clockwork. All right, Kate, what about you? Tell us about your podcast. What's going on?
Oh, well, I'm doing a show on voiceitradio.com. It's available through the Mixler app on the Mixcloud called Talking Sports with Cleveland Kate, in which I talk sports every Monday and Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. I'm taking the next couple weeks off to get through the holidays and all the craziness. I'll be back the first Monday in January, hopefully talking about baseball and basketball with my Cleveland Cavaliers and some Lake Erie Monsters hockey. You can find me on the Twitter at Cleveland Kate, CLVLNDK, the number 8. And as always on NFLfemale.com.
All right. Well, you can follow me on Twitter again at Sports by Sharona. I'm Sharona, and next week will be our final show of the year. We'll be talking AFC West, the San Diego Chargers, with our San Diego Chargers. OFR Cindy, always fun. I think it's fitting that we finish out the year with Cindy because she's such a hoot. She's so much fun, and our girl Sonja will be back. You can catch me a special appearance this week, tomorrow night, on the Wednesday night with NFL Female Podcast. Very excited to be on to do an interview with Kat Cressida, who is just an amazing, awesome woman, and you should tune in and check it out because she's great and she's done so many wonderful things. And my podcast is going to be back finally. I know you've been missing it. Haha. No, but Friday we'll be back. Back Talk with Sharona is going to be back. We'll talk about a lot of different things. You know how we do. So stay tuned in for that. Have a wonderful week. Shout out to Liz, for whom none of this would be possible. And thanks again to Michelle for joining us. Good night.
Peace. Good night.